CBS News Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues spoke with former Secretary of Defense and CIA Director Leon Panetta about the release of this controversial memo.
I believe it creates a constitutional crisis when the president distrusts the Justice Department and the FBI. They are our primary law enforcement institutions in this country. They're the primary law enforcement agencies under our Constitution. And when the president distrusts the FBI and the Justice Department, as he did in this matter, I think it does create a crisis in our system of government.
So, Jeff, what do you make then of Secretary Panetta's comments that he believes this memo creates a constitutional crisis?
Well, listen, that is something, Tanya, that we're hearing more and more from people who are familiar with how this government usually works. What we're seeing now, they say, is unusual, and a constitutional crisis is something that develops when you have this breakdown in trust between these very important institutions, the White House, for example, and its relationship with the Department of Justice and the FBI. So when you have that breakdown in trust, that's when you lead to this constitutional crisis. And that's what Leon Panetta was referring to there, and others around Washington have been talking about a lot. But over the last year and a half, I've talked to numerous sources, both in law enforcement and intelligence, who feel the same way. There has been this sense, as this Russia investigation has been unfolding, that it would lead to this kind of moment where there is this growing division between the White House and law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies. And that's when you get to this constitutional crisis that more people are talking about daily.
Certainly alarming. Jeff, let's get to the memo itself. It appears that much of what is contained in the memo was already known, already reported. Did it reveal anything new?
Well, a lot of it was reported. What I thought was interesting in this 4-page memo was when the FISA warrant was obtained, and that was in October of 2016, and that it was renewed 3 times after that. And so what that suggests is that investigators had enough evidence for these judges in the FISA court to approve this renewal, which you have to get every 90 days. So I thought that was interesting. But also the Republican drafted memo revealed other things. For example, it says that there was information left out of the FISA application that they believe should have been included. For example, that the dossier, this is the dossier compiled by the former British spy Christopher Steele, was funded at one point by essentially the Clinton campaign. That was omitted, they say. And so that is important. Also, they say Christopher Steele, the spy who gathered the memos that made up this dossier, had been in contact with an official at the Department of Justice. And in September of 2016, before the warrant was obtained, the FISA warrant was obtained, was discussing the dossier with this DOJ official and expressed a bias against Donald Trump, then candidate Trump, saying that Steele indicated that he was desperate that Donald Trump, and I'm reading here, not get elected, and was passionate about him not being president. So those were some of the new aspects that we learned, or new tidbits that we learned from this memo today.
But Jeff, what does the Trump administration have to gain exactly by making this document public?
Well, if you talk to Democrats on Capitol Hill, they will tell you that what the Trump administration and its allies have to gain is a way of discrediting the Russia investigation and perhaps singling out Rod Rosenstein, who is the Deputy Attorney General and in charge of this investigation right now, putting the focus on him. And so, supporters of this president say that what he has to gain is that this discredits the investigation. How much it discredits the investigation, well, that, remains to be seen. But it may do enough damage to the credibility of the investigation that perhaps if the president wanted to fire Rod Rosenstein and put someone more sympathetic to the White House in that position to then oversee the Russia investigation, this memo hurts if that is the plan. Or, excuse me, this memo helps if that is the plan.
Other watchers have called that plan another constitutional crisis, by the way, so we have to keep that in mind. Now, this certainly does put FBI Director Wray in a bind, and he responded to the release of the memo. What did he have to say?
Well, he did. He sent an internal message to the FBI workforce, essentially saying that I stand with you. I believe in the work that you do. He said, quote, and I'm going to read again, I stand by our shared determination to do our work independently and by the book. I stand with you. This has been another turbulent week for the FBI. There was the White House yesterday beating down questions about whether Director Wray was going to resign in protest because he had concerns about the release of this memo. There were, according to the FBI, grave concerns about some of the information in this memo because they felt that it left out some very important facts. I mean, keep in mind, this memo, it's just 4 pages, but what it is talking about is information that is in a larger intelligence report. And so critics of this memo say by distilling it down to just 4 pages, you're omitting some very important facts. Right.
Now, does this document indeed implicate Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation in any way?
Well, what it does, it tries to poke holes in the investigation. And so going forward, defenders of the president may try to say, well, this is a reason why he should not testify before the special counsel, Robert Mueller, because that could happen in the upcoming weeks. So it just gives supporters of the president another reason to discredit this ongoing and I believe still expanding Russia investigation. That's what this memo does, and that's why you have Democrats on Capitol Hill who were not happy with its release.
Well, Jeff Pegues, thank you so much for your insight on this.
My pleasure.